I saw Murphy Napier do a very similar video to this only a few days ago, and I figured I'd give it a shot myself. Now, I haven't actually checked out the video itself, but her channel is great, so if you haven't checked it out yourself, go ahead and do so. She's a great booktuber. Now, I am going to keep this spoiler-free, but I am going to explain very little reasoning as to why I like these characters, but we'll move on fairly quickly so that I don't ramble on and end up spoiling something, but if I do, I'll end up editing it out, so you don't need to worry about that. Now, to start it off with, number 10 is 10 Soon from the Mistborn trilogy, Era 1. His interactions with Vin, the main character, I think are just so wonderful, and they really accentuate the main character as it was and keeping her from becoming dull, in all honesty. But he's just so well written, and it was hard to put him at number 10 because I like him so much, but I mean, he made it on the list. There are some that I almost, well, I don't like them more, obviously. They'd be at slot 10, but it was hard to argue him to not be higher, but it was also hard to argue for him to be on the list. But ultimately, I ended up putting him on here because I think he just has some great interactions with some other characters. Coming in at number 9 is Nightblood with Warbreaker. He is such a funny character to me and so well written. Every interaction he has with every other character in the book is so funny, and the way he perceives things is just, I mean, it's perfect. He's just depicted so well, and so it was really hard to keep him off this list, so I had to put him at number 9. Now we have number 8 is Wayne from Mistborn Era 2. I totally understand why Brandon Sanderson decided to write this character and to include him in Mistborn Era 2. He's such a funny character. He's very well written. I mean, that's why he's on this top 10. His interactions with every character he comes across just highlights him more and more, and why Brandon Sanderson decided to write him. And I imagine he was just such a fun character to write, and he was so fun to read. And so for book 1 and book 2 of Mistborn Era 2, I absolutely gushed over him as a character. I thought he was so funny and so well written and such a gem to all of Brandon Sanderson's writing. Now we have number 7, and I haven't seen the video, but I'd be pretty surprised if anybody included this character on their top 10, but it is Wit from Stormlight Archives. Again, he's a hilarious character. I seem to be leaning towards those, at least at the bottom of this list. He is really funny, and the way he messes with other characters is just so perfect, and the way he just confuses everybody, he is hilarious and such a two-sided character. He's just so well written. I had to put him above the other characters, the other funny characters, I suppose you'd say. He's one of those characters that I really wish we got to see more of him, but I'm actually really glad for the little amount that you see, because it just makes his character so much better, and he's not overdone, whereas I could easily see if he was included in more and more scenes that he would be kind of a washed out character and easily bored and or hated if he was included more. So I think he's just perfectly done and definitely had to be on this list. And now we have number 6. Now, number 5 and number 6, I could have easily switched around and not really been upset with, but I was struggling with liking characters that I've read more of than I did with characters I read less of. So I had to reconcile myself with that, and I decided to truly look at which characters I liked more as opposed to which ones I just happened to read more of. And that is why Shallan Devar is the one who comes in at number 6. Now, this character is so well written that even though you probably haven't actually experienced the things that she's experienced, you empathize with her so much, and you just really feel for this character as she progresses and you learn more and more about her. It's just so well written, and it's really hard not to like her, and that's why she comes in at number 6. And now we're getting into the top 5 characters that I like of Brandon Sanderson's of all time. And like I said, number 5 and number 6 could easily be switched. And on a whim, I could have easily switched these before the video even recorded, despite having putting these down already. But I decided to stick with my list, and that is why Kelsier from the Mistborn series, Era 1, is number 5. Again, I could have easily switched him with Shallan. It was really hard to decide between the two. But I just really enjoyed reading Kelsier. I think he's such a cool character, and his backstory just pushes through on the stories, and it's just so well written. It's hard to dislike him, and yet you want to hate him for certain things. It's just great. I love it. All right, continuing with the last 5, we're on to number 4, where I have Vin from Mistborn Era 1. And the reason that she's on top 4 in the first of the 3 Mistborns, she has got a great character arc from beginning to end. The way she changes and the way she grows is so wonderful to me, and just such a joy to read and to follow along with her story. It was so good. It really was just so good and fun to follow. And that is why I had to put her at number 4. And now we're getting into the top 3. Now, I love all these top 3 characters for totally different reasons. So in my mind, they all have an argument for number 1, but for totally different reasons. And so it was really hard to decide where these characters went on my top 3. But ultimately, I decided to put them in the order that I naturally leaned towards on who I liked more than other characters. But with that being said, again, I could have switched them all around and I would not be upset because I like them all for totally different reasons. So, number 3, I have Vivenna from Warbreaker at my number 3. I think she is such a well-written character from the beginning to the end of the book. The things she goes through and the way she comes out of everything that she has to go through is so well written, and I just love following along with that character. I mean, just pulls at your emotions in all sorts of directions, and it really makes you empathize with the character that you don't even necessarily completely understand what she's going through, but you still really, really feel for her. And the reason I ended up putting her above Vin, that was actually a really big toss-up for me, is between the 2 for 3 and 4, is for me, book 2 and book 3 of Mistborn with Vin in there, her character ended up becoming more two-dimensional to me as opposed to the vast personality that you had in book 1. Book 2 and book 3, her personality kind of changes and she becomes more one-dimensional, which I didn't love as much. I still loved the character as a whole. That's why she's number 4. But just the way that Vivenna is written throughout her book in Warbreaker is so good. And now I could imagine having these switched if there was a book 2 and book 3 of Warbreaker, but there isn't, and so this is what we're going off of. And now we're down to the top 2 of my favorite Brandon Sanderson Cosmere characters. And now number 2 for me is Dalinar Kholin. I had to put him on this list. He is such an amazing character. Now, I don't love Oathbringer more than Way of Kings or the Words of Radiance in the Stormlight Archives. I still really like the book, but I don't like it as much as the first 2, and that is ultimately why I had to put him at number 2 and not number 1. But as a whole, the character is so well written. He's such a foundation to this story, and he's just so well written from beginning to end with his backstories. And it is just so wonderful to read and to follow along with the character. I know he gets tons and tons of love because he is such a well-written character. Probably top 5 characters of all time, in all honesty, in all fantasy. But that's a really hard list to make, and there's so many books out there. And you'd have to categorize those characters far more than just characters in general. I don't think I could even do it without being more specific. But overall, Dalinar, so well written. I love his dynamics with his family and with other characters and the way he struggles with certain things, but ultimately is so strong, at least strong-faced and strong in general. It's just so wonderful. And that is why he's at number 2. And for number 1, I struggled deciding if I put this one at number 1 or put Dalinar at number 1, but I ultimately put Kaladin Stormblessed at number 1 because I like Way of Kings more than any other Brandon Sanderson book. I think it is so, so good and superior to the other Stormlight Archives books. I know a lot of people don't disagree with me. They think Words of Radiance is better, and I do love that book really close to equally as much as Way of Kings, but I just like Kaladin more as a character than Dalinar, just barely more. I mean, it's a close race. Easily could switch them around, and I don't think I'd be upset, but I had to go with my gut on this one, and I ended up liking Kaladin more the more and more I read Stormlight Archives, but I guess we'll see as book 5 comes out eventually, as it comes out in the next few years. But for now, with only book 1 through 4, I like Kaladin more than Dalinar. But again, slim margins, and that is why he's at number 1. And now for honorable mentions, in no particular order. These were just characters that I wish I could have put in my top 10, but I didn't have a slot for them over the other characters that I put in here. So I'm not really going to give much of an explanation as to why they're here. They're just characters that I ultimately loved and wish I could have put in top 10. And to start that off is Sazed from Mistborn Era 1. He is amazing. I love his transformation from book 1 to book 3 and the things he goes through. It's just great. Second, we have Lightsong from Warbreaker. His interactions with other characters are so hilarious, and the way he splits kind of into two characters as the book progresses and has kind of a two-sided face depending on who he's talking to, I think is hilarious, and the way the character's written is so well. And then we have Vasher from Warbreaker as well. He was just a really fun character to read ultimately, and that is why I had to put him on honorable mentions. I wanted to put him at top 10, but I ultimately couldn't do that. And last honorable mentions is Rock from Stormlight, another really fun character to read, and there's not much else to it, but he was such a joy to read. Thanks for checking this video out. I love making Brandon Sanderson content, so if you have any other ideas for me, drop it in the comment below. Leave a like and subscribe because I'm going to keep trying to make these videos, and I got to keep reading so that I can keep making you guys content. So go grab a book and start reading.